All right, so I've been looking at your piece here. This one is uh, Levente Rückert, and it's from the Facebook Level Up group again. Um, so the first thing that I'm going to talk about is looking at the direction of the eye. I know you're talking about composition and correct use of colors and stuff like that. So the first thing is I'm going to show you the way my eye is kind of looking. Um, so the first thing I do is the massive size of this character here. I'm just going to create a new layer. Okay, so the massive size of this character here uh, takes me up over this way, and then I almost stop because you put this bar here, and so I immediately stop looking at this direction. Um, and it makes me pause, which is a good thing. But then I continue on and I start looking up here, which here is where I move off of the paper, and that's the bad thing. Same thing here, bright colors and it's pointing in a direction is moving me to the right of the composition. Same thing here, composition, and I get you're trying to get me to flow in this direction, but the problem you're having is, and I think it's kind of a big problem, is you don't have anything really to stop me from kind of looking off the page. The other aspect is, there are things like this which brightly draws me in this direction and kind of points me here too. So you've got kind of the right idea, but you need to figure out a solution to kind of put your characters into that foreground, middle ground, background. The next thing, or I'm sorry, not foreground, middle, that was my next thought, but you need to keep them on this composition. And to be honest with you, there's a couple ways to simply do this. One of the simple ways is simply just taking and doing the rule of thirds. And I'm just kind of building this up here. And I think some of the simple things to do would be to get a little bit more overlapping and look at your size relationship scales. So what I mean by that is taking this character here and just gonna and taking a look at this character here, scaling him up a little bit and moving him over, and then oops, let's do reselect invert, and then simply I'm just gonna really quickly fix this in here. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so simply by putting that in there, it creates a little bit more of an overlap, and it gives a size scale relationship to everything else. And I think that's your biggest problem you're having is on the original version. Looking at this, when I look at um, your foreground, middle ground, background, I see this character here and this character here as this is my foreground. And then you're trying to tell me that this grouping here is in the middle ground, and this is part of the middle ground too, and then this is the far background. But the problem is because you have so many characters, is that what you're doing, I think, is kind of giving me too much to look at. And the size scale relationship doesn't look um, very interesting. It's because they all have this similar aspect. Instead, what I would probably do is I would grab this guy, and since he's in that foreground aspect, I'm just going to really quickly kind of push him. All right, so since he's in that foreground aspect, what I would do is actually blow him up significantly, move him down, and I would even do something like this. Actually, let's do something like this. So if he's the foreground element, put him in there, put him over, and now you have this overlapping, and you can clean up, of course. And let's paint this over. And by doing this, and you can kind of start seeing what I'm doing is, I'm just going to kind of block this out. So by doing this, now I've got a much more serious elemental aspect of it. And that gives me kind of this character now is not, yeah, it's looking this way, but with the rule of thirds, I can actually probably move him over a bit. But honestly, he's, you don't want to cover up this character, but you can put his eyes on that line, and that gives you a good basis. And now with the composition, just by change that much, just by flipping that out, what's happening now is oops, didn't want to do that. What's happening now is instead of looking at all these other aspects of where I'm going, let's actually just dump this layer, create a new one. Okay, so now one of the aspects is, yes, I've got this as my foreground solid character, but these characters now can fade into the background a little bit more. And what I would say is almost grab these guys and just add this. This guy I'd probably either get rid of, or maybe even, let me try something with this guy. So I'm just going to, and this is just me playing with the composition just to test and see what looks better as far as composition goes. Because the aspect is, you want this guy, oops, try not to destroy the original, so copy. Alright, let's move this guy back up here, and moving him back here, and then erasing part of this. And then let's grab this and pop him out. And I think by putting this stuff in, like so, I think he's now in a better situation. Like so. And I think it's much more balanced this way, because now I'm almost doing a figure 8 with the characters. If you would change this axe to more of this direction and move the arm up here like this, and with this add this blue sword. I'm just going to grab this sword, And so by taking this sword and moving the two in this direction, I'm now starting to create almost a figure eight composition. And that's essentially what it's doing, is it's keeping me on the page. The other aspect is your colors. Your colors, as they become in the foreground, they need to be a lot more saturated. So this character here, let me just start painting. Let me just start painting some of this guy out here. All right, so this guy here, I would saturate a little bit more, and even don't be afraid to go in and brighten up some of his armors, you know, the eyes, and give me kind of that gold look, and see how that's starting to pop in. And don't be careful when you use the saturate and dodge tool. But now I've got, you know, I've got a little bit more pop here, and then I'm just going to start merging stuff here. So then I can add a little bit more pop into this, and I can start adding a little bit more into him, his reds, and I think that pop that draws the brightness, you know, things like that are going to kind of help you keep your composition in order. And then these characters back here, I would almost desaturate a little bit more. So here, I would definitely desaturate these the brightness of this, and a little bit of more desaturation on that on the background guys. Less contrast too, more your base colors in there, and I think that's going to help push your aspect a little bit more. There's things I would do, probably like define, you know, I'd probably define, I'm just getting nitpicky here, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I guess it's my OCD. So what I would do is separate this form a little bit more, like so. That way you have separate elements. You can overlap it, but this is your focal point. The head hanging is kind of your focal point, so you want to give that a little bit more priority. But I also think adding in a little less brightness in there, and you can add in some more brightness in the center, like the flashbang, but it doesn't need to be much because those are the background characters. And take a look at those aspects, and this is just my kind of take on it and the way I kind of play with it a little bit more. I always look at my line work when I'm, you know, foreground, background, middle ground. Now I've got, you know, I've got several layers, but with this situation here, I've got, with this situation here, this guy is my foreground, this guy is my kind of my middle ground, and then these characters here become kind of that background to your other backgrounds. And it lets me focus a little bit more on my different elements. Now you can kind of go in and change things around, and you know, it's more of a play type of thing at this point in the stage, but having the characters alternate a little bit more, that way makes it a little bit more, I think, kind of, how do I want to explain it? When I'm looking at this, I'm kind of flowing back and forth, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm kind of being pushed this way because it's off balance. You've got a lot of little figures over here, and I'm drawing my eye over here, and the flashes are pushing me off the screen. Whereas this way, the flashes are still there, but now I'm drawn here. I mean, I probably would even make this a little bit less bright, less saturated, but my eyes are drawn here, but the staff is pulling me back up. And don't on this particular character, I wouldn't. I did a tangent here, so I'll watch out about that. But just moving it over a little bit helps quite a bit. And then maybe you'd move your staff. Kind of replace your staff where it needs to be. But those are kind of the things that I would do. I really hope that helps. I think you do have a really good render technique. I think you have, um, a good sense of value and depth. I think the composition, like you're talking about, is just needs some fixing. And the biggest problem I see with it is a lot of these characters are all kind of that same size. So if you want a little bit more depth in it, just by scaling up these guys and giving them more contrast and putting these guys more in the background, you're getting a lot more uh, push and overlay, I think. And I think that's what you really want in your composition. All right, I hope that helps.